Vince, a lot of good questions tonight.
Yeah.
But are you ready for rapid fire?
I am born ready for rapid fire. Let's do this.
Fill in the blank. With the national championship game just days away, the word that best describes Notre Dame football is blank.
On the rise, ascending.
That's 3 words.
Damn it. Ascending.
All right.
Oof, man, dang it. I just think everything about Notre Dame is ascending. Coaching staff, roster, recruiting, image, all of it. It's all ascending. No matter what happens on Monday, it's all ascending.
My word, singular, is unfazed. I think that they have been unfazed by everything this year, from the loss to Northern Illinois that everyone, wanted to hang around their neck like a scarlet letter all year long. They were unfazed by that. All they did was go out and win out for the rest of the regular season. And then they get into the playoffs with all this different noise around them. And they've played 3 different teams with 3 different styles of play. And, each one a little bit closer than the next, but all they've done is go out and beaten the SEC champion, and they have beaten the second best team in the Big Ten. And now they're getting ready to play for the national championship. So they've been unfazed through, and obviously all the injuries that they have had to sustain along the way to get to this point, which is really just truly amazing when you sit down and think about it. They've been unfazed by all of it, and they're getting ready to play for a championship.
Yep.
So Riley Leonard was on the Rich Eisen show this week. Eisen, of course, is a Michigan alum, and he had this exchange with Leonard at the end of the interview.
The phrase, "and the enemy of my enemy is my friend." Riley, have you heard that one before?
I have, of course, and I know where this is going.
I have taught my children 2 things. 3 sweet individuals who are upstanding for future community members. You root for Michigan and whoever is playing Ohio State. So, Riley, are you aware of just the fact that I'm even sitting here and liking you and your coach and everything that you're doing? I don't even know what's going on in my skull right now. It's freaking me out. I'm freaking out, Riley. But I'm there for you on Monday night.
I appreciate you, man. I'm very well aware that the entire state of Michigan is going to be wearing navy blue and gold for the first time ever.
I can't even believe I'm saying it. I can't even believe I'm saying it. But, I wouldn't mind if Michigan wasn't the last team to beat Ohio State this year. I wouldn't mind it one bit.
That's also a good point. I remember I saw something that all of Michigan's just rooting for the game to somehow magically get postponed and never play it or end up in a tie.
So again, that's Riley Leonard with Rich Eisen, Michigan alum. Do you think that a majority of Michigan fans feel like Eisen feels about this Notre Dame-Ohio State game?
Look, there's no love lost between Michigan and Notre Dame fans, but there's even less love lost between Michigan and Ohio State. And I think it is the lesser of 2 evils. And I do think that there's a lot of Michigan fans out there, probably the vast majority, that are rooting for Notre Dame. And the small number of Michigan fans that I actually converse with, who I call friends, have reached out to me in one form or another saying how much they're rooting for Notre Dame. So
really?
That's a small pocket.
What about those guys who wear green? Like, what about Sparty? What about the Michigan State fans? I wonder where they are on this.
They're worried about next year. They don't care about what's going on.
Well, they've been worried about next year for a long time.
Yeah. Hey, look, I think they could be decent next year. I haven't looked at their schedule, but I think they could be decent. But look, the bottom line is I think there's a lot of Michigan fans rooting for Notre Dame on Monday. I really do think that is the case. They hate Ohio State with a passion that burns brighter than the sun.
That's true. It is very true. And it does feel like the hatred for Ohio State is much greater than the hatred for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Because they don't play Notre Dame every year,
correct.
obviously. I think that's got to have
There's no deep-seated history. I mean, there's a history, but
it's not deep-seated.
But it's not like the history between Ohio State
not
and
as
Michigan.
Recent. Yeah.
Like, it's just not.
Yeah, exactly. If we had more Michigan people in here, we could actually take a poll, but fortunately we don't, so we don't have to worry.
Fortunately is the right
that.
word there.
So what about you? Like if
I knew you were
it
gonna
was
ask that.
Michigan playing Ohio State, would you have a rooting interest? Like would you
Yes.
be rooting for Ohio State?
Yes. Actively.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
With fervor. Yeah. I have a hatred for me. I'm not even happy overall. Like,
what is your like? Why do you hate? Don't take this, like the wrong way. Neither one of us is a Notre Dame alum, so like, why do you hate Michigan as much as you do? Because it obviously is connected to Notre Dame.
It's the people. 100%. It's the people that I'm around, more often than not. There's not a lot of Ohio State fans that live around here that I interact with on a regular basis.
Are the Michigan people as obnoxious as the Indiana people were before the Indiana game?
Listen, the Indiana people rose up the ranks pretty quickly. Now, I don't know if that's sustainable for them. You know what I mean? Like, because I can't stand Indiana basketball. Yeah. Like with about the same amount of passion as I can't stand Michigan.
Me too.
So
all it took was their Final Four run in 2002. I had been here for like a year,
that's right.
And to see how quickly all those people got so obnoxious, and it's like, wow, really?
It was absolutely a situation of you've clearly never been here before and you don't know how to react. Like that's what it felt like with IU fans. So yeah, yes, they rose up the rank. They didn't hit Michigan yet because I don't think it's sustainable. Michigan will always be there. IU is probably going to come back to reality a little bit next year, and so they probably won't be quite as loud. I think they're going to be solid over the next few years, but I don't know that they're going to be, 11-1 Indiana. Like I don't see that happening, but we'll see. We'll see.
My Michigan Ohio State stance has historically been which one is going to screw up the other one's season. And that's who I root for. Fair. And like if they're both good and they're both playing in the national championship game, I mean, one of them's going to be the national champion. So I have no one to root for.
Yeah.
In that instance. So no, I would not have a rooting interest if Michigan and Ohio State were playing for the national championship.
I rooted for Michigan in the Michigan-Ohio State game this year and see.
Well, I did in that, but again, like
it didn't turn out like that.
Screw up the other team's season, but it didn't long run. Yeah, it didn't do anything.
It just backfired.
May have made them even better.
I know
the way it turned out.
I know. So I listen. My hatred for Michigan is so hot that as ecstatic as I am about where my kid is going to go to school, it's still in the state of Michigan, and that bothers me a little bit. Like I wish I could just pick it up and move it to Indiana.
Yeah, Jesse did, and Jesse's school colors were the same. Like
that's true.
His head coach was a Michigan man.
And there it is.
They wore maize and blue.
Yeah.
So, yep. Didn't have the the helmets, but
that those helmets are awful.
Honestly, I've always liked the helmet.
I know you have. Like the helmets. The helmets are right on par for me with the candy stripe pants for basketball for IU.
Right.
Like those two, because they're unmistakable for that school. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so it's just brings up like boiling blood energy for me.
Yep. Okay, so speaking of people we love to hate, Brian Kelly's season ended last month. He was with the other coaches who are not coaching in the national championship game in Charlotte this week for the National Coaches Association convention, and he did an interview with CBS Sports and was asked if he is pulling for Notre Dame to win the championship next week. Here is Brian Kelly's response. I wish we had audio, but I'll just have to read you.
Okay.
Quote, I'm happy for all those guys. I pull for them. A lot of guys that were there on both sides of the ball I recruited. Obviously, I want to see those guys win it all, and I think they're in a great position. Totally excited for those guys. End quote. Brian Kelly. Do you buy or sell BK's sincerity, Vince?
Oh my God, it's a huge sell. Are you kidding me? anything with BK and sincerity in it, I'm going to sell no matter what the
That's
topic
exactly
is.
right. The opposite of sincere. There's a photo of the purple-faced man.
Right. Like that is, I would not, that is not sincere in any way, shape, or form. And you want to talk about revisionist history with that comment. Like, are you serious right now? You should have just said no comment and it would have been better.
That's like the key to this whole thing. Like,
Man,
I'm surprised that he keeps answering questions about Notre Dame, quite honestly. But he keeps answering questions about Notre Dame.
my
And
God.
there is no way that he is sitting in Baton Rouge and he is pulling for Notre Dame because he knows, like Brian Kelly sees the comments, he reads the media, he hears it, he knows what's going on. He knows that everyone's talking about Marcus Freeman's actually made Notre Dame likable again. And the last guy wasn't very likable. I mean, he knows, he's never had, I think he's never had the introspection to realize, he's not self-aware enough to realize how despised he is by so many people. That's part of his problem.
His reality is his reality. You know what I mean? He's one of those people. Like, I'm sure in his mind, he absolutely believes what he says. It's part of being a narcissist, which I totally think that he is. And so I think that he believes exactly what he said, even though it's not even close to backing up what he said before about you can only win national championships in the SEC. Yeah, I mean, we're
about to get to that, but let me ask you this, because Salty had this in and I was saving it.
Okay.
Would the Irish have reached the national championship game this year with Brian Kelly as head coach?
No, because they would have lost the Georgia game. They would have won the IU game. Well, first of all, let's just say they were 11-1. The regular season went exactly the way that it did, and they got to the playoff with this seeding and all that. Okay, so I know that's a lot because I don't think that would have happened either. But let's just say that. Okay, I think he beats IU because he has better players, right? And I also want to say he has this roster, which I don't think he would have had if he was the head coach.
No, the roster would look completely
different. What I mean? Yeah,
because you're assuming that he has this roster.
Right.
But the roster would look completely different.
So let's just say this roster was gifted to Brian Kelly for the playoffs. Let's put it that way. I think he beats IU because they have a better roster.
Yeah.
Right. I think he loses to Georgia and then the season's over.
Me too.
At that point. So
yeah.
Because
he doesn't have the same mindset. Like, he was always fully content to try to keep it as close as possible. But like in the big moments, Brian Kelly doesn't have the same mindset that Marcus Freeman has about actually playing the game to win, going for it, and just the confidence that the players, have because of Marcus Freeman as well. I don't think that the mindset is the same. Like, physically, the bodies might be the same,
right?
But I don't think that I just the overall mentality and the aura of the team is completely different if it's Brian Kelly running things.
100%.
So, after Kelly got to LSU, he did several interviews with national outlets, of course, and he made the comment that he wanted to be in an environment where he had the chance to win a national championship. Well, so now in this interview with CBS Sports, he says that fans and media have misinterpreted those comments. Quote, "They're selling it the way they want to sell it. Why do you leave Notre Dame? You leave Notre Dame because you're taking another challenge. I took Notre Dame to championships. It's just the way you want to twist it. You only leave Notre Dame to go win a championship. I wasn't leaving Notre Dame because I couldn't win a championship. You can win championships at Notre Dame, but I chose another path because I wanted a different challenge."
Couldn't help yourself.
No. Your reaction to that, Vince?
You want to talk about, again, your own reality, right? And just talking back everything that he said when he was walking out the door at Notre Dame. Everything that he said punctuated the fact that you can't win a championship at Notre Dame. Every single thing. the chef, the resources, the
Mhm.
recruiting, all of those different things. Everything he said was a backhanded shot at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Every single thing.
All you got to do is like go out and see all these interviews that he started doing after he got down there. And it was just filled with that kind of stuff.
Yes. And as this Ohio State fan aptly says, and I appreciate this hummus hero, he says, yeah, Kelly's latest statements on being at a place to win that championship is some next level nonsense. That's Brian Kelly in a nutshell. It's next level, man. Like just when you think you've heard it all, he's like, no, I got more. I got more. Don't worry. So yeah, just hilarious.
He needs a mute button for himself. He just doesn't know when to shut up. He's like Ron Burgundy, like anything you put on the teleprompter, Ron Burgundy's going to read. Like Brian Kelly will answer any question you give him because he thinks, again, like in his reality, he thinks he's got the perfect answer for every question. And that like, I'm going to answer it this way, but he's always got the wrong response, like play the hits from, I want to execute my players like go back to Deshaun Watson. Remember the questions that he got about should Deshaun Watson have stayed in college for another year? It's like that was a case where Brian Kelly, just should have went zip. I'm not going to answer that question. 3 years down the road now, like just because somebody asks you a question about Notre Dame at this point doesn't mean you have to answer it. And I get it. Notre Dame is obviously playing in the national championship game, so there's a big spotlight, but Brian Kelly just needs to stay away from saying anything about Notre Dame anymore.
Yes.
It does not do him any good.
No.
All it does is make him look like a bigger jerk every time he says anything, even though he thinks that he's spinning it in the way that he wants to spin it.
Yeah, 100%. I don't even know why he brings it up. I would be like, no, just change the subject, guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to give you the soundbite that you're looking for. And yet he does. I don't understand why he just keeps doing it. Yes, USMA 87, he's like, BK's a politician. Like, there's no question that he won't answer and try to spin it in whatever way that he wants to spin it. I get it. But, dude, you're doing yourself no good. And everybody's saying that, he's going to be rooting against. Of course he's rooting against Notre Dame.
He's absolutely rooting against.
Are you kidding me? If I was in his shoes and I said all the stupid stuff that he said, I'd be rooting against Notre Dame too. Because Notre Dame winning doesn't do him any good.
Nope.
At all.
All it does is another knock on his legacy. I mean, the guy is the winningest coach in Notre Dame history. He's never going to get a statue over there at Notre Dame, even though he probably is pretty sure that he will. You know what I mean? Like, it's never going to happen. It'll never happen because he did not win games that mattered.
Correct.
Enough. That's what it comes down to.
And, he left Notre Dame the way he left Cincinnati, with everybody pissed off in his wake.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to get you any statues either. You know what I mean? Regardless of the accomplishments. And, we give Brian Kelly credit for, getting the team to where he got them, the program to where he got it. But, man, you can't leave a fan base like that or an institution like that the way he left it and expect them to bring him back with open arms. Like, that's just never going to happen.
He just needs to, type out on a note card and stick it in his wallet. And then anytime somebody asks him about Notre Dame, just pull it out and read it. I loved my time at Notre Dame, but I'm the head coach at LSU now. I'll only answer LSU questions. It's
super simple.
As that. Yeah.
Super simple. And we wouldn't be talking about it right now.
Right.
If he said that, he's just an idiot.
So Brady Quinn sees things a bit differently.
That he does.
Than Brian Kelly sees things. The former Notre Dame quarterback is, of course, Notre Dame's most prominent current media member. He works for Fox, and he's got his own radio show with LeVar Arrington, 2 Pros and a Cup of Joe. And so the day after the Irish beat Penn State to move on from the national championship, Quinn had some interesting things to say about kind of how this push started 3 years ago. And I honestly, again, this came out last week and I was kind of sitting on this. I've had this, I'd listened to it, and I was like, do I really want to get into Brian Kelly stuff, the week, leading up to the national championship game? And then Brian Kelly gave his interview with CBS Sports and again, put himself out there. So I'm like, perfect timing, because BK is disputing, again, this whole, I went to LSU to be in an environment where I can win championships. So here's what Brady Quinn had to say about hearing those comments that Brian Kelly made when he went to LSU for the first time and what it led to. Now, this is a little bit longer than a typical cut we would play, but it's Brady
That's
Quinn
okay.
with some pretty important stuff.
I'm going to sit back and enjoy it.
All right, here you go.
It's been a long time in the making, in the sense of, when you go back to how Notre Dame ultimately got here, this was all sparked by the decision of Brian Kelly to choose to go to LSU. Brian Kelly, the head coach at LSU, who back when he left Notre Dame, I think he said sometime in January that he wanted an environment where they had the resources to win a national championship. That was his words. And just to be fully honest and transparent, that ticked me off, man. Literally January 19th in 2022, and after he said all these words, I called my attorney the next day and I said, you're going to file for a collective. This is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to put it together. I formed a board, started a fundraise, proved the concept. After that, started to bring on more people, grow and expand. And it created a collective that had the resources necessary to support this. So this is back in, all triggered because of Brian Kelly. And there are so many people who stepped up from Notre Dame Nation to help put together the resources necessary to support Marcus Freeman, to support the players, to be able to step up because they were ticked off. I mean, I'm just one of many. Like when I look at what our collective was able to start and how we were able to help out our football team, it was in large part a call to action because of Brian Kelly. And if you look at where the university is at now and the fact that they're building onto their sports performance center, they've got millions that they've been able to raise through NIL and support their program. And many players, which the quarterback Riley Leonard, probably off the top amongst everyone else, is there in a big reason because of NIL. All those things to me, like I take great pride in. And I know there's a lot of people who took great pride in watching this team, watching Marcus be able to succeed. And they took that as a sign of disrespect from Brian Kelly when he left. So now that Notre Dame's there, they're playing for a national championship. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, hey, the mission's not done. This is no different than Brian Kelly. BS. This is very different than when Brian Kelly had this football team. The way Marcus has built this thing up, the way Notre Dame has built up over his tenure so far, it feels different because it is different. This is nothing comparable to what Brian Kelly was like when he was the head coach there. They had some great teams. The 2012 team that went to a national championship with Manti Te'o. You look at some of the teams with Ian Book, guys who were able to get to the playoff. The way this team is playing, the way it's built, the resources that they have, it's on a different level now.
Brady Quinn, true Notre Dame man. Vince, what do you think about that blowtorch that Brady Quinn just took to Brian Kelly?
It's the first time I've heard that cut, and I was like the little hairs on your arms starting to stand up a little bit. Like that's a pregame speech for me. Like what he was just saying was like a pregame speech for me, because the fact that with Brian Kelly leaving, Brady Quinn was like, okay, now it's time to raise money for Notre Dame.
Now you tick me off. We're gonna get down and dirty now.
Oh my gosh. Like Brady Quinn is cementing his legacy at Notre Dame, off the field as well as on the field, right? Because he's in charge of all of this, NIL stuff and everything. Like that is friggin' amazing. I didn't know all of that, obviously. I knew he was in charge of the collective, and I knew all of that.
I didn't realize that it stemmed specifically from that.
Oh my gosh. But doesn't that tell you, number one, it tells you how BK treated the alumni, the football alumni at Notre Dame, because not only did it tick off Brady Quinn and he started this thing, but I guarantee you most of his calls for that collective were former players, and they're all like, yes, let's do this. And you didn't see anybody going out on a limb for BK when he was here to do all of that.
Right.
but they did when he left. Freaking glorious.
That's exactly. I mean, you look. I mean, between the money that they raised for that, for fund,
right.
FUN, Friends of the University of Notre Dame. That's the collective that Brady Quinn is talking about. That was so big and has helped them out so much. And by the way, I posted. You can see the Irish Breakdown Notre Dame football post in the chat. That is the link on YouTube to the full. It wasn't an interview. It was his
show.
It was his show. Two Joes or two pros and a cup of Joe. It's Brady Quinn and LeVar Arrington, which is kind of ironic considering, Arrington, of course, played for Penn State. So you had a Notre Dame, you got a Notre Dame guy and a Penn State guy hosting a national radio show together. But Two Pros and a Cup of Joe is his radio show. So like you can go back in their archives and, like if you didn't get that link, or you can just Google that. If you Google Brady Quinn, Brian Kelly, it might just come up, or just go to YouTube and search that. It'll probably
that speech needs to get more play on social media. I don't know if I'm just not seeing it or what, but that speech needs to get some more play because that is glorious.
So Andy Milton fan, the other side of it, he says, don't you kind of feel like Brady is saying it since he created the collective, the team is now successful? I don't think that he's trying to take credit for it. I think that what he's saying is like, look, there's no doubt that this collective, in terms of, NIL and what Notre Dame has been able to do with NIL over the last 3 years since they started it, there's no doubt that this collective has helped out Notre Dame immensely in their ability to be legitimate players in the NIL space and get these transfer guys, especially, to come here and be able to retain your, like Howard Cross and Riley Mills as examples. Like, they could have entered the NFL draft last year and probably been on NFL rosters this year. They wouldn't necessarily have been like, first, second, third round picks, most likely, but they would have had a really good chance to be on NFL rosters if they had declared for the draft last year. But they stayed around, and NIL is a big part of being able to retain those guys. So, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, like Andy Milton fan is saying, is Brady Quinn basically, is he saying, that he's taking credit for the success?
He's allowed to take a little bit of credit for it.
To an extent he is, but he's also saying that what motivated this, what really kicked him into gear to get this started, was Brian Kelly throwing shade at Notre Dame on the way out the door and saying, we can't be competitive. I couldn't be competitive at Notre Dame. I wasn't getting the resources that I needed at Notre Dame. I can get them here at LSU. And Brady Quinn said, well, you want to see resources? We're going to get some resources. Right. And that's not going to be an issue at Notre Dame.
Well, and
so whether he's claiming success or
that's okay,
whether
though.
He's claiming credit for it or not, doesn't matter at this point, because there's no doubt that this has played a huge part in what Notre Dame's been able to do with NIL.
So Garrick 74 says, I'm not a Brian Kelly fan, but that makes it sound a little bit like he was right that he didn't have the support he needed. Do you want to know why he didn't have the support he needed? Because nobody liked him.
It's because of him. It's because you talk about night and day personalities.
Correct.
Why he couldn't get more support. Like, stop making excuses and just go out and do it.
Right.
And it's interesting because Pete Sampson in The Athletic had a Q&A this week with Greg McElroy, of course, from ESPN, who's been doing, the ESPN. He's been the game analyst for all three of Notre Dame's college football playoff games. And they talked about Marcus Freeman in there. And one of the things, because obviously when they do these pre-production in the production meetings before the games, the analyst, the play-by-play guy, they sit down with the head coach and go through and talk about different things about their team and, ask them questions every week. And what McElroy said is not once in any of these production, and they had him during the regular season as well, not at any point during any of those production meetings has Marcus Freeman said, oh man, I sure wish we had this guy, like insert your guy
Who got injured?
Who was lost to the season for injury. You know, Jordan Botello, Boubacar Traore, whoever it happens to be. Never once did Marcus Freeman make excuses for like any of those injuries hindering the path that they have had to get to where they are. You know, because like, again, like this is all before they got to the national championship game, not knowing the result of any of the college football playoff games they had. And never once did he make excuses like, oh, we're so banged up. We've got all these injuries. I don't know, you know, how are we going to do, you know, any of this kind of stuff. Freeman never made excuses for that.
Yeah.
And, you know, Brian Kelly, the king of throwing his players under the bus and deflecting any blame from himself, you know, like, but Marcus Freeman, again, the complete opposite of that. And so like any of these, you know, like you're telling me that the donors don't notice that, the alumni don't notice that. How about the open arms for the players, like the past players that Marcus Freeman has had? Again, night and day, complete opposite of anything that Brian Kelly did in his 12 years at Notre Dame.
And that's why all these players are donating to fund. And it's not just players, but I mean, you see more players coming. Like, Sean, you and I are at every home game. I have not seen this many players in the last 3 years coming back to games because they recognize them every time that they're there, at least the big-time players. But there's always other players there as well who aren't getting the recognition at the game, right? Because there's only so much time. But I can't remember during a BK season this many players coming back to games. You know what I mean? Like that just it wasn't the culture that BK had. It just wasn't. And it is with Brian Kelly. He's the one that's doing Zooms in the offseason with all the former players, whoever wants to be a part of it, to give them an update on the program and to do all of these different things. Like BK never wouldn't take the time of day to do that. You know what I mean? And Freeman he's making those guys a part of the program.
That's exactly right. Gordy and BK constantly took the easy way out in recruiting and coaching. Not surprised he failed to effectively fundraise. And I mean, you know, like, again, like when you look at the many list of differences between, you know, like look at the relationships and I know it's look at the culture that Marcus Freeman has in this program. And, you know, and again, like the no excuses thing, like you think that doesn't go a long way. The fact that he's not standing up there at the podium, throwing players under the bus ever once, not even a hint of it in 3 years. You think that doesn't go a long way in the locker room and with parents and with, you know, of recruits and everything else. Everybody notices that kind of stuff. And that's why Market like Brian Kelly would have probably cut off his arm to get a chance to go coach in the NFL. Marcus Freeman is the guy who NFL teams actually covet. You know?
And he's like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because again, like I think a lot of people kind of, you know, like you can say culture and, you know, people kind of, you know, might roll their eyes or, you know, think it's overrated or whatever else. But I don't think that Notre Dame is sitting here getting ready to play for a national championship if the culture wasn't what it is in that locker room. That's a 180, I think, from what it used to be. Again, I've tried to avoid, and somebody brought it up yesterday, you know, like BK stuff this week. But if he's going to go out there and go out of his way, it's like, you leave us no choice. And then it was just gold to have that Brady Quinn stuff ready to go. So bravo, Brady Quinn. The College Football Coaches Association is exploring a solution to curtail players faking injuries during games. One possibility they're looking at is requiring any injured player to miss the rest of the drive in which he gets hurt. A coach could use a timeout in that drive to get the player back in the game. An additional fine for the head coach is also a possibility that would come with this. So do you buy or sell this potential change, Vince?
I mean, I like the fact that they're looking into it to try to curtail it, because the fake injury stuff is very, very annoying. There's no doubt about it. The only problem I have is how are you going to definitively execute this particular rule? Like, how do you know if a player is actually injured or not, if he cramps up or, whatever? You know what I mean?
Like a cramp
that's
is a perfect example.
right.
Like, because that's something, you get a cramp, you've got to leave, go to the sideline for maybe 3 or 4 plays or something like that. But then it's like they rub it out or whatever, and you can get back in.
Right.
Like, how are you going to definitively be able to determine if someone's actually faking?
Right.
That's what I want.
That's my biggest issue with this whole thing, because at some point they are going to fine or punish, a team when they had a legitimate injury. It just at a very inopportune time. So it looked like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the only thing that I worry
James'
about
idea.
with this.
Get a note from your doctor.
Epstein's mother. She's
right.
probably not busy. She can start writing notes for people.
And that's because I was thinking about it. Like, if a player is legitimately injured, he's going to miss the rest of the series anyway,
Fair.
But again, like, there are things that happen, whether it's a cramp, even twisting your ankle, or just, a stinger, like there's a lot of little things that might knock you out for a play or two. You just get the wind knocked out of you.
Right.
There's a lot of things. So how are you going to determine what's real and what's not? That's what I just don't know, how you can create any kind of rule. And like, finding the head coaches for this really seems a bit.
I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. And I do think some teams take advantage of the rule and go down unnecessarily. I do think that for sure. But the teams that are where actually guys get hurt, like, they're going to get punished for something that they didn't do. And that's going to bother me. And it's going to happen in a key moment that's going to decide a game. And that's going to be a problem.
Milton Fan says charge an actual timeout for injuries. See, I don't know if I like that either, because then, again, it's like guys legitimately get hurt. So now you've got to lose a timeout because a guy got hurt. Like,
yeah, that doesn't seem fair. Again,
you can't, like, how do you determine? I don't know how you determine what's real and what's not.
Right, exactly. That's the problem for me.
Now, I mean, there are some obvious ones where the guy's walking around and some guy runs in for the sideline and goes, "Hey, drop, get down," pretend, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yes, I don't like it. I wish that there was some way, but I just don't feel like this is the way to go. Like, maybe you've got to sit out for the rest of the series. Okay. But then you're also punishing people who are legitimately hurt, if it's something that could have got them back in 2 or 3 plays.
That's tough.
So
that's tough for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for today. A lot of great questions in the chat on Mailbag Day as we get closer and closer. Doesn't it seem like it seemed like last week, to me, I felt like flew by. This week is completely dragging.
Because there's nothing this week.
That's right.
We've got no practice availability. I don't think we have any media really availability to my knowledge.
They were doing players this afternoon, players tonight.
Okay. That's right.
Basically, Marcus Freeman's press conference, his Zoom on Sunday, was the only press conference that he did, before he gets down there. It's going to be Saturday and Sunday when all the media happens down there in Atlanta this week.
Right. So yeah, this week is just crawling. I mean, Notre Dame's not even leaving for the game until Friday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they've got all week here, and then they'll be basically down there for the weekend, and then they come back on Monday night. So yeah, it's just been a weird week, and it does. Having the game on Thursday of last week made things very quick because, people traveling home after the day delay and everything else. And then it's like, oh my God, we've got 3 days and then it's going to be game time again. Like, that's what it felt like. And now you've got a whole week. So it's kind of wild.
Absolutely. Hit the like button before you leave, subscribe, rate, and review. And we will talk to you very soon. Just like IB is bringing you shows.
Oh,
I think there's a show every day leading up to the game.
Yep,
basically.
there will be. Yep.
So,
and Brian in the chat, go ahead and message me on Twitter, buddy. If you're being real with me.
About what?
Potential ticket.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. All right, hit the like button. We'll talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.